So this is kind of like we were reviewing last week. This is our last session on how the gospel impacts our priorities. And then we're going to be talking about how the gospel impacts relationships, which I'm really, really excited for. We're going to kick it off by talking about how the gospel impacts our family, how it impacts the friends we have, how we choose them. And then over the retreat, we're going to be talking about like relationships. So I'm going to be talking about singleness, and then Mo and John are going to be talking about dating and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to hear about that. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about work because I did some math because, I don't know, sometimes I'm nervous. And I wanted to figure out how much of our lives we spend working. And so if you want to track me, you probably should. But it averages out to about 12 and a half years, which is kind of a more conservative estimate. And so that is a lot of time. And when I first saw that, I kind of freaked out at first because that's a lot of time in my life that I have spent working. So I was kind of looking through and being like, okay, like, is this an okay thing? Like, should we be spending this much of our lives working? And so I went back to Genesis, kind of back when everything was perfect. It's kind of a good model to figure out how did God mean the world and then how did he put it together after we messed it up. And so when I looked in Genesis, I was seeing, okay, so God works 6 days, he rests 1. So that gives me the indication that, God's not condoning being a workaholic, but God recognizes that we are going to spend a lot of time working. And what we want to see, though, there is a balance of this work and rest that we've kind of been talking about a couple of weeks back. Even though it's totally normal, totally okay to be working for long periods of time, that's supposed to be balanced with rest. Work was never meant to be our idol. We don't define God by the work he did in the first 6 days. We define him by who he is, how he lived out, how he put his character in creation and all that things. So we define God through his word and stuff like that, not by what he did. And that's how it should be for us. Our work shouldn't be our definition, Or really when it comes down to life, what we're known by, you guys want to be really more known by who you are, not what you did. Because the things that you do in working life will pass away, but people will remember who you are. And just like there's a rhythm and a balance to that. So like kind of looking back, it kind of took a little bit of that shock factor, like, okay, we can see here when work is balanced and viewed in a healthy perspective, it's not a bad thing. And because it's something that takes up so much time, and that perspective piece that I mentioned about work is so important, that's the angle I wanted to take. So I know when I was, most people in this room, mentee-wise, are kind of seniors in high school on the cusp of going out into the real world. I know when I was there, I really just wanted someone to sit me down and be like, I have the word from God, you are supposed to do this. No one has that word for you. I'm really sorry. So I decided I'm not going to sit up here and pretend I have that word, so I'm just going to talk about the perspective you should have while you figure it out. Kind of figure out what you should do with your lives. So with that, let's go ahead and start with a word of prayer, and then we'll kind of get into this perspective. Lord, thank you for how you are just weaving things beyond what we see, how you are putting pieces in place and stories for a time that, for a plan only you know, Lord. Just looking back, I can see how you've gifted people for things, and I ask that you give us confidence in our giftings and just focus on you and how to live those out in you, for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. So kind of the first piece I wanted to talk about is just, I wanted to talk about this tension that we live in. So we all experience this tension of the here, right now in this world, but the reality that, we have heaven to look forward to, and heaven is so much more awesome than I'm ever going to understand. But the other piece of that tension is that while we're here on earth, what we do here does matter. You can look at places like 1 Corinthians 3, 12 through 15. 2 Corinthians talks about it too, but it talks about how, like, you may have heard the term the Bema seat of Christ. It's not a salvation judgment type of thing, but it's like God is like, okay, I gave you these resources, these situations, these gifts, abilities. How did you use them? And so things like that, it's not going to be a time where God's going to come the hammer down on us, but He's just going to review our lives and see how we used it for His glory. That's also what people are getting at when they say, like, oh, when I get to heaven here, the Lord say, good and faithful servant. It's this idea of holding this tension, like, my focus is heaven. Heaven is where I'm going, so I don't want to be necessarily attached and tied to things on this earth. But I know that when I get to heaven, the Lord is going to look at what I did here on this earth. And there are people I'm going to be leaving behind. There's a legacy you're going to leave. So it's looking and being like, am I living my life in a way that gives glory to God? And that's kind of the tension sometimes we have with work, is what we're doing in our work giving glory to God. And I want to be really careful that you don't hear me say, if you're not doing ministry, you're not giving glory to God, because I don't believe that personally. I believe the Lord calls you to whatever He calls you to, and if that is in business or nursing or art or theater or something, if it's not ministry, like, you can still use that for the glory of God, and God calls you to that place for a reason, because there's probably some gifting that God's given you that no one else can fulfill in that sphere of influence, and you can use that to give glory to God. Now, like I was kind of saying earlier, when I was your age, I just wanted someone to tell me exactly, like, some sort of divine revelation of what we're supposed to do with my life. But what I had to remember over and over and over is that even while I'm still figuring out what God has for me, and even at 24, I'm still figuring out a lot of those things. You guys are growing up in a day and age where the whole I stay somewhere and I work there for 40 years, like, that doesn't exist anymore for a lot of people. And so you're just kind of constantly figuring out, where does God have me and where He wants me. So I wanted to just kind of talk about this perspective we can have on God's sovereignty, on how God is in control of our lives, and how He is working something good for us. So we're going to actually be spending a lot of time in Proverbs. So I'm going to need 3 people to take out 3 sections for me. The first is going to be Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Someone wants to grab that for me. Then the other one is going to be 15:22. Someone wants to grab that. Did someone take off? 15:22? Yeah. And then 16:3.
I'll do it.
Okay. So while we're flipping over there, for me, Proverbs has been kind of the book that baffled me. It kind of felt like it was like this hodgepodge of stuff that was pieced together and thrown in here. So I kind of wanted to talk through the framework of Proverbs because it's really interesting. So I watched the Bible Project video, and Proverbs was written by Solomon, and it was basically giving his wisdom, and it's kind of set up, it's a compilation of like sayings and poems and like speeches. So the first 9 chapters are kind of meant to set up how we should be approaching this book of Proverbs. There's a lot of stuff about like a father teaching his son, and like there's poems about wisdom personified as a woman. And it kind of talks primarily about these 2 main concepts we find in Proverbs about like the fear or reverence of the Lord, and then also just like what biblical wisdom is, which they defined, and I really like, as just applying the knowledge of God's word to just everyday situations in life. So that's like the first 9 chapters, kind of to set up how we read them in the middle part of the book, which is the biggest part. And the biggest part is just compilations of sayings and stuff like that. So for me, the really interesting thing to realize was that a lot of these sayings are meant to be read as probabilities, not necessarily promises per se. So Proverbs 12:21 I thought was a really good example of this. So no ill befalls the righteous, but the wicked are filled with trouble. So that's not necessarily to say like, oh, if you work your way up to the status of righteous, like nothing bad will ever happen to you. But it's kind of saying, if you're following God and doing the things that please Him, you're probably naturally going to eliminate a lot of things that will cause you trouble. So, when God says, hey, don't live in sexual sin or sell illegal drugs, if you follow God and don't do those things, you're probably going to eliminate some of those factors. So it's kind of like a probabilities thing, and that applies to most of the verses we're going to read, except 3, 5 through 6, which fall in that first half. And then the last part is kind of just in bookend a lot of the wisdom literature, and even a lot of Old Testament books. It's really cool to see how God kind of closes them up in the end. And the last part is just 2 poems, so one by a guy named Gur, I think, and a guy named Lemuel. And they're just really cool because they kind of just recap again the focus that we're to have reading these books, and then how we can then apply the wisdom of Proverbs to everyday life. So before we hop into all of that, the last thing I want to do is kind of so remember how we talked about at the beginning of the class. A success of this class would be if at the end of it you guys understand how to look at the scriptures and apply them to your life yourself, gain truth from them. So normally you sit up here, reads the verse, and I unpack it for you. Tonight I want to put the pressure on you guys, and we're going to open it up to group discussions. I do have notes about what I got out of it, but I want us to chat and figure out for ourselves what this is saying and how it relates to work. So the 2 questions really to focus on when we talk about this is just, what is this verse saying? And then how does this apply to our topic that we're talking about tonight? So we're going to get started with Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. So whoever said they had that, can you read that out for us?
Yeah. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight.
All right. Anyone have any thoughts to start us off?
I love that passage. Yes, I think it's quite easy to take up our own understanding of circumstances and situations. And, I know that there's been a lot of cases with this passage, a lot of my understanding, and what it does is help us to hold all of life circumstances open, and so that we're not clinging on to anything, so that if He does change course with something we're not leaning on understanding, we're not going to run off the cliff, we're going to go with Him. So, really like that one. It's a good pick.
Good thoughts. Other thoughts you want to add? James?
Yeah, I also agree. I agree with you. I like that. Just as I'm thinking, it says to trust the Lord with all your heart and not on your own understanding. If I think about it, God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Therefore, our understanding is flawed. I consider that we can't see the whole picture that Christ does. So if we lean on our own understanding and try to do our own way, we're only going to mess up our path. Whereas if we just choose not to lean on our own understanding, Christ is going to make our path straight, and doesn't even necessarily right away, but over time, which is really cool, because His knowledge is far beyond ours. We don't even know what He's doing, but our thought way of thinking is flawed compared to His. So
Yeah. Other one, Stacy?
I do like the whole verse, but I feel like the other 2 talked about 5 more than 6. And I think 5 is the harder one, and it's something to grow into, to truly trust. I think 6 is more of a practical start, where it says to think about Him in all your ways. If you see people who have rubber band on their wrist, they snap it. If you have something that would help you to trigger when you're thinking about something, if you have a decision to make, it's your path.
Yeah.
You can think about Him and think about Him physically being, He is right here with you that really what you think God wants you to do? I think that is a more practical first step, and then you grow to trust. But I love that.
Yeah.
Stacy, your mind is beautiful.
It's from God.
Yeah, these are good thoughts so far, guys. What else do people have to add to this one?
Well, what I see is that there's 3 things for us to do when we're looking to God and we're doing something, not doing something, acknowledging Him, and then He will do this. And like you said, it's not a formula, you know, for 100% all the time this will happen, but it's, to me, it's like if our attention is on Him, if we're desiring something from Him, if we're in communion with Him, you know, then that's just going to be a natural.
Yeah.
Well, and also it just, to me, it's ongoing. It doesn't just like, happen in one day and it's over. It's your whole, it's every day, it's your whole life, and it's a walk,
Yeah.
It's an everyday thing.
It's kind of like a lifestyle.
You don't ever arrive at not looking to the Lord,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry. It's like looking at like your slide as well, like what I'm saying, how does the Bible work? Just like things can happen at work that derail your mind, or just like when you get to work, you're just like in this box, and like this is how you act, this is how you're gonna function, these are the things you're gonna do. And sometimes you have to get yourself out of that box and acknowledge God to figure out what He's wanting you to do while you're there. Like you just have to open it up and be like, and not just go with the flow, not just be there to fulfill what you've got to do to get your paycheck and move along. But it's more, realize that it's more important than, and God's still trying to grow you, even though you're in the midst of your work day, even though you're in the midst of just what it is that you need to do before you can leave that building. And sometimes that can feel like a dead end where you've gotten nowhere and you go back and forth, but God wants to use that daily, regular thing to keep moving your spiritual life forward so that you can get closer to Him ultimately. And you have to have something that can make you think, okay, God, where are you with this? What do you want of me now, or where are you taking me? So you have to be able to acknowledge Him even in the midst of that daily, just mundane, regular, just almost sometimes monotonous over and over stuff you've got to do. Because otherwise, you're going to be, you can then begin to get just stuck in one emotional place. And so the quicker you can acknowledge Him and begin to process with Him, the quicker you can move forward in the path He has for you.
Lauren, did you still have a thought to add?
Wasn't my thought.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of, you guys were picking out what I was picking out too, is just trusting God's wisdom is really hard, and it's a daily thing, and it's kind of a surrendering thing, but just the reassurance that God is guiding us. It's not this random rabbit trail that is going to be endlessly frustrating, but there'll be times when we look back in our lives and we'll realize, like, okay, that's what God is using in that season that seemed meaningless or seemed really hard or was a really good season too, God has a plan for all of that. So let's hop over to 15:22 now. The person who's going to read that, can you go ahead and read that out for me?
Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed.
Okay. So what are some thoughts on this one?
But to me, it also just goes along with the other one, is that when we're called sheep, and when a sheep gets alone, we think we got it going.
Yeah.
And we're pretty smart and wise in our own eyes, but that is not the truth. So when you're with others and seeking other counsel, others in a community, in a body of people who have the Lord's truth in them, and they can speak it to you, it just makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Because when we're by ourselves, that's when it's not a good picture, you know? We're not meant to be ourselves.
And it's a good check for yourself as well. If you are not seeking godly advisors, it's probably because you don't want someone to actually tell you that what you're planning is wrong.
Yeah.
Or, not a good idea. And so, yeah, so that's a good check as well. Like,
Who are my counselors?
Right.
are they people who are automatically going to agree with me, or are they going to actually tell me the truth?
Yeah.
Because it,
It's having accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge in life. What other thoughts on this one?
I think we learn from like experience, and so they might have gone through a similar experience and been able to save us a lot of trouble or lead us what they could have done or what they did do.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to think that you're automatically safe in an abundance of counselors if you misinterpret what Solomon's saying here. But I think that what he's really getting at is counselors, that were there in this guy, so ultimately they're kind of helping you maybe as guardrails, but you ultimately determine the own course of your life, whether that's dangerous or not, or what your decisions are, and then you have to be able to step out of the sheepfold or not, and there are times to do that, to lead the way, or otherwise, trust the Lord with all your heart, going back to the other one, but yeah, I think that it's really awesome to have that diversity of experiences, like Julie was saying, but that, it comes down to really wanting to make the decision.
It's kind of a both and like people can tell you like, I can confirm this is the Lord's direction for you. But then it's on you to actually walk out in the Lord's direction for you.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Again, you guys are pouring out what I was getting from it too, and I think sometimes this fear when we're figuring out our careers that too many opinions is just a bad thing. And there's like an extent, if you ask everybody in your life their opinion, there is an extent where that's too many opinions. But trusted people, I'm thinking of your mentors, I'm thinking of your parents, the other people who know you, like those are people you want to be seeking advice on. Even listening to this, I'm loving how many mentors are chiming in because, like, guys, they have so much wisdom that it's important to be tapping into because they've lived life that you haven't lived, kind of like Julia was saying. And they can encourage you, kind of like Ethan saying, okay, now it's your time. It's your turn to take it out, the step of faith. So I just love that because it's like encouraging, like, okay, the Lord's going to guide us. And he might use other people to help with it too. So last one, 16:3. Whoever was going to get that, can you read that out for us?
16:3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established.
Okay. Thoughts on this one? James, you look like you had a thought.
I do, be patient.
Okay. If you want to say it, you can. But you can
I'll say it. I want to hear other people to say.
Okay. Other thoughts?
So I heard a sermon based on this once, and it talked about standing at a fork in the road, and you think it's either right or wrong. When it's not right or wrong, the Lord's going to use either or. And so, but choosing and let Him establish it, and then committing to whatever it is that you choose. So just, the fork, obviously there are forks in your life, but that's not the right fork you should go on. But if you are praying about it and He brings you a fork and they both look like very viable, godly choices, He is going to use either one. One may be that leads to the other, right? And so, but committing yourself to that, to what He's chosen for you.
sometimes I feel like that's a more terrifying position to be in, where it's like, either one of those glorify God, so what are you gonna choose? Versus it's like very clear, like that's sin, that's good. Like, those are difficult crossroads to be in. Any thoughts?
This is the same thought, I think, as 3, 5, and 6.
I like all this like had verses, and there's another one that's coming on that's like, you know, there's a way that seemeth right unto man, but the way thereof is the way of death. And I remember that because it was a song that somebody was singing to me obnoxiously, and it's cool because I like what Angie said about, you know, even though, you know, obviously we hope it's not always the case that we think it's the right decision, it's death. But I think that whenever we do have the guts to, you know, go a certain way, that he's going to establish us, he's going to meet us there, he's going to be the one holding us and guiding our steps. So just kind of, I don't know, weighing that with the other. It's interesting.
You ready now?
I don't know, like I read it a little bit before we got through this, because I don't think, I actually really like it. It says commit your work to the Lord. I think it's really cool. Like everything we do, there's a verse, I can't remember what it is, but it says, in everything you do as if you're doing to the Lord. And that includes our work here. It says commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. But the plans that are being established, he's doing, which therefore if you're committing your work to the Lord and being faithful to him, he's going to work it out to be according to his will. And I like the next verse that follows, because it says, the Lord has made everything for its purpose, even wicked for the day of trouble. But for those of us who aren't wicked, living in sin, but choosing to follow him, like it's going according to his purpose, which means that in the end it will pan out, whether that looks good or that even looks bad in the moment. But I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah. These are good thoughts, guys. Anything else? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on from this section. But, thank you guys for participating in that, for looking through this. And my hope is that with this exercise, this is what you remember. You remember looking at the Lord's Word and just the encouragement that He's in charge. He's working things out. And He is helping you. So kind of the last thing I want to do before we break into discussion is that I do recognize that there might be this little bit of a point of maybe frustration where it's like I came to this topic so gung-ho that I was going to get this like special revelation and I'm not. Maybe because you're just super lost about where to go next. And so like we were talking about, you know, the Lord has that figured out. And so just being diligent and seeking Him, He will reveal that to you. And even if you have to go left to go right, the Lord will work that out. And as long as you're following the Lord, like even if He changes careers on you, like that wasn't a wasted journey to go in the first place. But I did want to leave you guys with a tool that I used in Washburn when I was a student there. So I used to teach in Blue 101 as one of their like peer educators. It was super fun, one of the best jobs I had there. And this is a tool we would share with first year students. And so it's called Focus 2. It's free to anybody, super easy to find on the internet. But it's basically an informal assessment that pulls things that are interesting to you, your personality, things you value, and then just gives you a list of careers that might be compatible. It will rank them according to salary from highest to lowest, so do keep that in mind when you're going through. It's not ranking most compatible to least, it's salaries. And it's, you know, it's not scientific, so you want to also take that grain of salt too, but this assessment, I think, is helpful if you are completely lost about that next step. Just because when I look back at my results, when I type it, so the first, that's what I was going to be up until my junior year of high school. I actually would have been graduating from grad school this year with my MFA in English and applying for jobs as a professor. But the Lord took me in 2016 and said, no, we're going this way. So when I'm saying like your journey's not wasted, that's my own life. My journey as an English major was not wasted. Also, another career I was compatible was marriage and family therapy. So there was a time I was considering becoming a therapist full time and working with families and children because I enjoyed that. But something I didn't realize when I was looking through these results is that one of the careers I was most compatible for is the favorite part of my job right now. I didn't even know this came up on me. And I wanted to let you, I share that just to let you guys know, God is working things that you don't realize in the moment. You know, psychology, my minor, is up there. I can't tell you how critical my degree has been in English to this job. And I would have never in a million years, where I was in college, if that had come up, I would have just passed it on, not knowing that God had gifted me for aspects of camp that are really helpful. So I share that for you guys to be like, you don't know where God's going to lead, but be open to where He's going because it is going to lead you somewhere that is just incredible. You don't know it right then. I had no idea in college that God was going to lead me this way, but He did. And the thing is, guys, just start somewhere. Start pursuing something. Wherever the Lord is leading you next, like He is going to work it out. He is guiding you. He's leading you. He's not going to leave you hanging out to dry. Wherever God leads you, you know, that journey is not wasted. So we're going to be transitioning into discussion time now. For your discussion, I have kind of 3 sets of questions that you guys can read through and then kind of pull what's most relevant for you right now because everyone's going to be at a different place with work right now. So the first one's kind of just pulling your mentor on their work history. You know, how did they get to where they were today? What wisdom and insight can they provide for you? Because they all have a story too that is incredible and impactful that they can share with you. The second part is kind of reviewing things like your vision statement, your image bearer statement, your values, those final portfolio sheets. I told you we'd use them again. So you can look back on those and be like, okay, what does this say? You know, God's gifted me this way. I want to use my skills this way. What can I pull? Why or my God be leading me? And just even thinking through, like, how can I be giving God glory in this area, this next season, as I'm figuring out the next step? The third pool of questions is kind of just more, again, of an exercise. Like, maybe you know pretty clearly where God is leading you next, and really what you need is just some encouragement in who God is and His character. So just taking time to remind yourself of God's sovereignty, pulling out scriptures and writing them down, maybe to memorize or put up around you so you can look at. So we do have a little bit less time than usual, but I want you guys to get started in looking at those, working them how you are. Do be back at 8:20 this time, just because the homework for next class is probably going to be a little bit new to most of you, so I want everyone to be here at 8:20 so we can talk through that. Any questions before we go? Okay, cool. I'll see you guys back here at 8:20.